I was reviewing a risk model when my father called. No small talk, no pleasantries, just 4 words. I gave it to Chloe. I paused. Not because I didn't hear him. I did. My mind just refused to compute it. I stared at the phone like it had betrayed me too. This was how it ended? A cold voice, no warning, no meeting, not even a damn memo. I built Ellison & Co. from the inside out. Joined the firm straight out of Stanford. Dual degrees, 2 internships, 0 days off. 17 years. No vacation. No skipped meetings. I knew the books better than I knew my own friends. And now Chloe, my half-sister who once asked if AmITheA was a skincare brand, was CEO. Dad, I said, my voice clipped. After everything I've done, why her? She's my daughter too, he said. Like that made it fair. Like blood was the only credential that mattered. I've already signed the papers, he added. That was it. End of the line. I sat there. Office lights humming. City skyline glinting through floor-to-ceiling glass. Portland looked the same. I didn't. Chloe was probably popping champagne in some rooftop lounge. The same person who once blew $400K of trust fund money on digital llamas. Dad always felt guilty about her. Divorce guilt, absentee father guilt, I'll make it up to her someday guilt. Well, I guess someday was today. He called it a transition. I called it betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just shut my laptop, walked past a dozen employees who still thought I was their boss, and went home. Not to mourn, to prepare. The Marlowe Room isn't on any public directory. It's tucked beneath a luxury hotel in downtown Portland. No golf, no piano jazz, just power, real power. Elaine Sharp was already there when I walked in. She always is. She used to be my father's closest partner back when the company was still 2 laptops and a dream. Now, she was the only person I trusted with what came next. Marcus, she said, lifting a glass of rye. He finally did it, didn't he? I sat across from her. No smile, no filter. He handed everything to Chloe. She let out a slow, venom-laced laugh. Guess being competent is out of fashion. I'm not here to vent, I said. I'm here to start something. Her eyes sharpened. Go on. I'm building a new firm. Lean, quiet, ruthless, and I'm going to make Ellison & Co. irrelevant. She didn't flinch, didn't sip, just said, how much do you need? $3 million to start, I replied. Plus names. Old money. Serious money. She nodded once. You'll have it by tomorrow. No fanfare. No handshakes. Just the way I liked it. I left the Marlowe Room at 10:42 p.m. The air outside was bitter and sharp, but I didn't feel cold. I felt clear. That night, I reopened an old contact file. People the first hired, trained, promoted. People Chloe had ignored, overruled, or disrespected. People who didn't owe Ellison & Co. a damn thing. I called Carmen Lee first, the risk analyst who Chloe once humiliated in a boardroom for flagging her pet project in Canada. Carmen, I said, I'm building something new. I want you with me. She didn't hesitate. When do we start? One by one, they came back. Lucas Vance, strategy. Aaron Blake, external relations. Maya Chen, ops. They weren't loyal to the name. They were loyal to the mission. And me? I wasn't after revenge. I was after precision. It took exactly 11 days. 11 days from my last conversation with Elaine to standing in the middle of a bare, echo-filled office space on the north side of Portland. It used to be a packaging plant, now it was mine. High ceilings, thick walls, cheap rent, no logos, no eyes. We didn't need aesthetics. We needed silence, speed, and a plan. On the whiteboard, I'd scrawled one word in red marker, Delta. That would be the name. No ties to Ellison, no shadow of legacy, just something sharp, clean, surgical. Delta Strategic Holdings. The people I'd pulled in weren't second stringers. They were the best. Carmen Lee, risk. Analytical, terrifyingly precise. Lucas Vance, strategy, quiet, fluent in leverage. Aaron Blake, external affairs, charismatic, persuasive, lethal with a portfolio. Maya Chen, ops, a machine in human form. And me? I'd handle the rest. I didn't need layers of hierarchy. I needed 10 people who could outthink, outwork, and outmaneuver 300. The first strategy session took place around an old wooden table we borrowed from the law firm downstairs. No slides, no titles, just printouts, coffee, and a shared hunger. I didn't bring you here to rebuild what we lost, I told them. I brought you here to build what should have been. Lucas nodded slowly. I've already marked 3 high-yield firms we can poach, all previously dismissed by Ellison. Carmen, I said. How exposed are they? Bad, she replied. Chloe pushed through a Canada expansion with no logistics backup. They've already blown $9 million. If we nudge their main supplier, Hawthorne Materials, they'll drop 35% of operational capacity. I leaned back in my chair. They're bleeding and don't even feel it yet. Aaron placed a tablet in front of me. Investor sentiment is shifting. Fremont Capital pulled 2% from their fund. Northbridge is asking questions. I can arrange a back-channel meeting with Crescent. We moved fast. Within 2 weeks, Delta had a roadmap, 14 potential acquisitions, 2 investment offers, 1 signed deal with a logistics firm out of Idaho, a deal Chloe once called irrelevant. But now, that little firm gave us access to a network Ellison never knew how to tap. Then the first headline dropped. Ellison and Co. loses 2 senior executives amid internal shakeup. I didn't even look up when Carmen tossed the article on my desk. Thomas Dale and Regina Morris, she said, CFO and head of ops. Chloe tried to reallocate the CRM budget to fund an influencer campaign. They walked. I sipped my coffee. They're unraveling faster than I expected. But I wasn't done watching. I was calculating. Every mistake Chloe made handed me leverage she didn't know she was giving. Lucas came into my office later that day with a folder marked Harland. You remember that mid-sized logistics company you proposed acquiring? I nodded. They just backed out of Ellison. CEO, said Chloe, tried to lowball them with vague international promises. You want in? Set the meeting, I said. 3 days later, I sat across from Michelle Evans, founder of Harland Logistics. She didn't waste time. Chloe promised expansion, she said, but couldn't name a single partner. You were the only one who did your homework. We shook hands in silence. No press release, no champagne, just a signed partnership agreement and a quiet shift in gravity. The next morning, the Portland Business Journal published, Ellison and Co. fails to acquire Harland Logistics. Concerns over executive vision. Their stock dipped 12%. Their board panicked. Their silence spoke louder than any press statement. Carmen dropped a new report on my desk that night. They've defaulted on 2 supplier payments. 3 of their second-tier vendors are pulling out. I ran my finger down the column. They're choking their own supply chain. I looked at her. Let's squeeze it. Hard? She asked. No, smart. That weekend, Maya texted me from the Seattle branch's back channel. Resignation rate just hit 24%. Morale is imploding. Good. I didn't need to lift a finger. They were gutting themselves from the inside out. We weren't rushing. We were pacing. And while they bled on the surface, we built underground. Lucas secured our second acquisition, an AI-powered fulfillment software firm rejected by Chloe as too niche. Carmen mapped every executive departure from Ellison over the last quarter. Aaron started hosting off-record meetings with concerned Ellison investors. Delta wasn't just alive. It was growing, agile, and invisible until we chose otherwise. I looked out at the rain-slick windows of our concrete floor office. No decor, no suits, no performance, just momentum. We were no longer in the shadows. We were the storm gathering behind them. I didn't need an army. I just needed timing. 3 months into Delta's silent growth, Chloe finally tried to secure a win. She went back to one of the companies I'd scouted before being forced out, Marlowe Systems, a mid-tier solutions firm with government contracts and proprietary software and logistics automation. Chloe offered them visibility, scale, and what she called brand synergy. They declined. Why? Because 2 weeks earlier, we offered them something else. No nonsense. No ego. No empty slogans. Just execution. We closed the deal over one dinner, one handshake, and a quiet clause in the contract, exclusivity, which meant Chloe's pitch was dead on arrival. And the news hit hard. Delta Strategic Holdings secures Marlowe Systems, an exclusive partnership. Deal Ellison and Co. misses third consecutive acquisition opportunity. That same morning, my phone buzzed. Elaine. Her message was short. You just flipped their oxygen tank. And she was right. Without Marlowe's systems, Chloe's newly announced Ellison Automation Initiative was a hollow promise. Investors noticed. Clients started calling. That afternoon, Carmen walked into my office, iPad in hand. Northbridge Holdings wants a meeting. They've lost confidence in Chloe. They suspect she's bleeding cash behind closed doors. Schedule it, I said. No names, just charts. We met at a rooftop bar downtown. Cold wind, empty lounge. Janet Monroe, director at Northbridge, cut right to it. You're the reason Marlowe walked, aren't you? I didn't confirm, didn't deny. I opened a folder instead. Inside, Ellison's supplier default rates CRM budget cuts resignation spikes across 5 departments. Timeline of Chloe's NFT funding and Gen Z event campaign. Flops. Janet looked at the data, then at me. You know the board will implode soon. I nodded. That's not my concern. What is your concern then? I leaned forward. I'm not interested in copying Ellison and Company. I'm interested in making them irrelevant. Janet didn't blink. I'll talk to our partners. By the time I got back to the office, Maya was already there. She slid me a document. Ellison just filed to delay 3 supplier payments. Their contract with Hawthorne Materials suspended due to a strategic restructuring. I let out a breath. They're trying to stop the bleeding with duct tape. Should we push harder? She asked. Not yet, I said. Let them feel the oxygen thinning. The following week, 2 more headlines hit the financial wires. CFO, departure triggers investor panic at Ellison and Co. Delta Strategic Holdings. Rumored to be shadow magnet for top industry talent. We didn't deny it. We didn't confirm it. We let the speculation do the damage. But the real blow came on a Monday morning. I was in my office, reviewing a report from Carmen, when Aaron walked in. You're going to want to see this, he said, tossing a printed article onto the table. I glanced at the title. Harland Logistics names Delta Strategic Holdings as primary strategic partner. The ripple was instant. Ellison & Co.'s stock fell 17% before noon. Major shareholders called emergency board meetings. Fremont Capital issued a formal statement questioning executive leadership. That same day, Chloe called an internal town hall. It was streamed across branches. Her voice was shaky. She blamed external manipulation, legacy sabotage, and temporary market volatility. But the employees weren't buying it. I know because half of them were already messaging Maya on LinkedIn. Carmen entered my office later with a faint smirk. Someone from Ellison's board just emailed me. Confidentially. They want to know if you'd consider a buyout reverse merger scenario. I shook my head. Tell them I'm not buying the whole company. I paused. Just the pieces worth keeping. That night I stayed late. No team, no calls. Just me, my notes, and the city below, soaked in fog and light. I hadn't spoken to my father since the day he cut me off. Not one word, not one message. Until now. My phone lit up. Thomas Ellison. I let it ring. let the sound echo around the room. Then I answered. "Marcus," he said, voice rough. "We need to talk." He asked to meet at the old Ellison & Co. headquarters. I showed up at 6:00 a.m. sharp. The building looked the same. Sleek glass facade, polished marble entrance, everything manicured to perfection. But it felt different now. Hollow, like a mausoleum dressed up in a suit. The doorman still remembered me, gave a quiet nod, one that carried more honesty than most boardroom handshakes. 17th floor, conference room. Same room where I used to lead expansion strategy meetings. Same table I once mapped out the 5-year global growth plan, the one Chloe scrapped for a TikTok influencer rollout. Now, it held only 3 people. My father, Chloe, and me. I didn't sit. "Say what you need to say," I told him. "I have a full schedule." He looked older, thinner, paler. The confidence was gone, replaced by something almost unfamiliar on his face. Regret. He slid a folder across the table. "Client churn is at 38%. 4 major investors have pulled out. The media is calling us unstable. We're losing control." I didn't touch the folder. "You didn't call me here to review data," I said. He sighed, long and heavy. "I made a mistake. I thought Chloe could carry the weight. I thought you were too hardened, too cold for leadership. But I see now this company was built on your spine." He looked at Chloe when he said it. She didn't meet his eyes, just stared at the folder like it could magically reverse the headlines. I turned to her. "You dismantled a system I spent 17 years designing. You replaced strategy with spectacle. And when it collapsed, you pointed fingers." She crossed her arms. "This wasn't all me. You've been sabotaging us." I cut her off. "I didn't sabotage anything. I just built something better. Quietly, efficiently. While you burned through cash on gimmicks, I focused on execution." My father stepped in again. "Marcus, please. We can fix this. We need you back." "The board," I laughed once. "Sharp. That line might have worked a year ago. Not anymore." He tried again. "You're still Ellison blood. This is your legacy too." "No," I said. "You gave my legacy away when you handed her the reins without a single conversation. Now it's yours to bury." I turned to leave. He called out, voice cracking. "If you walk away, the company dies." I paused at the door, then let it. The door shut behind me like a verdict. 2 weeks later, it was official. Ellison & Co. filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Ava, our newest hire at Delta, dropped the news article on my desk like it was a trophy. They've started selling off assets. Venture capital arm, Seattle data infrastructure, the East Coast office, all going piece by piece. "Good," I said. "Call Elaine. We'll take Seattle and New York. And the enterprise client division, believe the scraps." She smiled. "How much of Ellison & Co. are we reclaiming?" I looked out the window. Only what was mine to begin with. That afternoon, I signed the acquisition agreements. 4 divisions, all profitable, all formerly under my leadership before they decided to erase my name from the wall. Now, they belonged to Delta Strategic Holdings. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no big team announcement, just a signature in blue ink and a quiet nod. Later that week, Ava entered my office again. "Thomas Ellison is here. Says he's not leaving unless you speak to him." I didn't flinch. "Send him in." He walked in slowly. His tailored suit looked loose on him now. His hair was almost entirely white. He took in the space. Minimalist, clean, purpose-built. No distractions, no excess. "Nicer than my old office," he muttered. I didn't reply, just gestured to the seat across from me. He sat down like he was carrying something heavy on his back. "I was wrong," he said. Silence. I chose the wrong person. I see that now. Chloe had the name, but you had the weight. You were the architecture holding this whole thing together. I folded my hands. "You knew that. You just didn't want to admit it." He nodded. "Slowly, I lost everything. The company, the people, and worst of all, your trust. I looked at him. Really looked. This wasn't Thomas Ellison, the empire builder. This was just a man. An aging man who gambled on sentiment instead of merit and lost. No one took anything from you, I said quietly. You gave it away. He didn't argue. Didn't try to rewrite the ending. If I could do it over. You can't, I said, cutting him off. He nodded again. Slower this time. Thank you for letting me speak. I didn't respond. He left without another word. A week later, Delta Strategic Holdings held its first international press event. 3 new offices, Toronto, London, Singapore. A new integrated accounting platform, a private investor portal. At the press conference, a reporter asked, "Do you consider this revenge?" I smiled. Controlled, cold. No, I said. This is reclamation. I simply took back what was mine and rebuilt it the right way. They chose her, so I chose war, and I won. But not because I shouted, not because I begged, because I planned, because I waited. And when the moment came, I moved, quiet, precise, unstoppable. Story 2, I was lying in a hospital bed, barely able to move. A work accident had shattered my leg and left me with 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung. The doctors had told me I was lucky to be alive, but at that moment, I didn't feel lucky. The pain was unbearable, and the uncertainty of what would come next filled me with dread. But the most crushing blow came not from my injury, but from the silence I faced from my wife. Her name was Barbara. We had been married for 8 years. She had a son, Gage, who was 16 now, but was only 8 when I entered their lives. Over the years, I had tried to be a good stepfather to him, building him a treehouse, teaching him to fish, and all the things that stepdads are supposed to do. It wasn't always perfect, but it was a routine, one that I thought was solid. I thought we were solid, but all of that began to unravel the moment I was injured. I remember that first night in the hospital. The pain meds had me drifting in and out of sleep, but I still managed to call Barbara. I asked her not to bring Gage to the hospital, as things looked bad. She told me she'd be there first thing in the morning. That morning came. No Barbara. Day 2, day 3, still no sign of her. I thought maybe she was dealing with something at home or with Gage, but I couldn't shake the growing feeling that something wasn't right. On day 5, I called again, and this time, Barbara answered while watching some reality show. The noise blared in the background, and she barely acknowledged the seriousness of my condition. "I'll try to make it tomorrow," she said. But by day 7, there was still no visit, no sign of concern. I began to feel the weight of the silence, a weight heavier than the injury itself. I was starting to worry not just about my health, but about her. What if something had happened to her, or to Gage? I asked a nurse if my wife had called, but there was nothing, just nothing. Weeks passed, and Barbara managed to call me a grand total of 2 times. Both calls lasted less than 5 minutes. Each time she was distracted. First, it was Curtis, our dog, who was sick. Then, the dishwasher was leaking. Gage had a game. Always something. I started to wonder if I was just an afterthought, a minor inconvenience. And as the days passed, I couldn't stop thinking back to our anniversary. It was only 2 months ago, but looking back, it felt like another lifetime. I had tried to talk to Barbara, to see if everything was okay, but she just smiled and said, "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" It was a strange answer, one I dismissed at the time, but now it felt like foreshadowing, a warning I should have noticed. By the time I was moved from ICU to a regular room after 3 weeks, I could no longer ignore the truth. Barbara wasn't coming. My sister, Bernice, had been visiting almost daily, bringing home cooked meals and keeping me updated on everything, including Curtis, who was doing better. I could see the pity in Bernice's eyes whenever she mentioned Barbara's absence, but she never said anything directly. Not until that afternoon when she hesitated before asking, "Do you want me to talk to Barbara about this?" That was the moment it all started to hit me. Barbara wasn't just neglecting me. Something else was going on. I didn't want to believe it, but I asked Bernice to check our joint account. I wasn't sure why I suspected it, but something told me to look. When Bernice helped me log in, the sight of what I found made my blood run cold. Over the past month, $6,000 had been withdrawn from our account. ATM withdrawals, transfers to an account I didn't recognize, and a charge from a jewelry store. Barbara didn't wear jewelry, except for her wedding ring and a necklace I'd bought her last Christmas. My heart raced as I processed the numbers. I called Barbara that night, and for once, she actually picked up. But when I asked her when she was planning to visit, her response chilled me. She said, "Gas is like $5 a gallon right now, and I've got a lot going on. You know, Gage has stuff, the house needs work, the roof is leaking again." I reminded her that Bernice had offered to pick her up, that friends had offered to drive her, and that we had more than enough money for gas. The withdrawals had drained our account, but it was still enough. That's when she said it, the words that will haunt me forever. "You're not worth the gas money. Everett, either die fast or heal quick." I'm sick of this in between. There was a pause, a moment where I could barely breathe. Then Gage got on the phone. He said, "We don't miss you," his voice cracking. He was trying to sound tough, but I could hear the hesitation in his words. And with that, I hung up. That was the breaking point. The moment I realized that my life, my marriage, my family, everything I thought I knew had been a lie. I'd been living in denial, convincing myself that things would get better, that Barbara just needed time. But no more. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew it was time to take action. Time to stop waiting for a change that would never come. So, I started making plans. For the next few days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the words Barbara had said echoed in my head. Die fast or heal quick. It felt like a punch in the gut, and I couldn't shake the image of her saying it so casually. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started thinking hard about what came next. I knew I couldn't stay in this hospital forever. The doctors wanted me to stay for another 3 weeks, but my leg was healing, and I couldn't let Barbara keep making decisions about my life from a distance, as if I was just some inconvenience she had to deal with. She hadn't visited me in over a month, and I was done waiting for her to care. Meanwhile, my sister, Bernice, had been amazing. She'd brought me all the essentials food, updates about the dog, and just the support I needed. One afternoon, she came in looking more worried than usual. She hesitated before saying, "I drove by the house today. Silvio's car was in the driveway." Again, Silvio, that guy who had been helping Barbara around the house when I was working late. The guy who always seemed to linger just a little too much. I didn't react right away. I didn't feel angry, just calm. A cold, unsettling calm. Everything finally clicked. All those little things, the missed calls, the strange behavior from Barbara, the excuses, it all pointed to one thing. She had been seeing him. They'd probably been seeing each other long before my accident. And now, it was all laid bare. That night, I called Tessa, the nurse who'd been the only one kind enough to sit with me during her breaks. I didn't tell her everything. I didn't need to. But I asked her, what would it take for me to check myself out early? She hesitated, told me I'd be risking serious complications by leaving too soon. But I wasn't going to wait around any longer, at the mercy of a woman who had already proven she didn't care. I needed to move, to get out before Barbara emptied our bank account completely. The next morning, I signed the AMITHEA against medical advice papers. The doctor spent half an hour trying to talk me out of it, but I was firm. I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. Bernice picked me up in her SUV, and as we drove away from the hospital, I could feel the weight of everything finally lifting. 51 days in that place, and not one visit from my wife. I told Bernice, "Take me to the Staybridge on Wesley." "Not home." She glanced at me, then back at the road, her face unreadable. "You're going nuclear, aren't you?" she asked, her voice low. I smiled. Not because I felt good about it, but because I knew she was right. I was about to give Barbara exactly what she deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. By the time we reached the hotel, I had a plan. It wasn't just about getting away from Barbara. It was about rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I wasn't going to let her destroy me, not financially or emotionally. I'd let her have her affair, her games, her money, but not me. The first night in the hotel was surreal. The room was too quiet, too empty compared to the constant noise of the hospital. No beeping machines, no nurses checking on me every few hours. Just me, my thoughts, and a throbbing leg. I ended up binge watching some random cooking competition show just to distract myself. The pain meds weren't doing much, but they made everything a little more bearable. I had to numb myself somehow. Bernice brought me breakfast the next morning, one of those microwave breakfast sandwiches, and the strongest coffee known to man. As she set it down in front of me, she was scrolling through the neighborhood social media group on her phone. That's when I learned that Barbara had posted about me. She'd shared a picture of us from years ago, talking about how heroic I was, how I was fighting for my life, asking for prayers. All the while, she hadn't visited me once. I wanted to call her right there, scream at her, but I didn't. Not yet. I couldn't let her see how much it still hurt, even though it was obvious. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had that power over me. Instead, I did what I do best. I made a list. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing everything I needed to do. Find a lawyer, document assets, figure out what had happened to the money, get my own bank account, secure a place to live. It felt good, logical, like I had some control over the situation for the first time in weeks. The lawyer came the next day. His name was Reggie, and he wasn't at all what I expected. He showed up in jeans and sneakers, carrying a backpack instead of a briefcase. But the moment he started talking, I knew he was exactly what I needed. Straightforward, no nonsense, and specialized in complicated domestic situations. He asked the question that had been on my mind: divorce or separation? I didn't even have to think about it. Divorce, one said, and the word felt almost too easy to say out loud, like it had been waiting on the tip of my tongue for so long. Reggie spent the next few hours going through everything. The house purchased before we were married, but refinanced together. The cars, one in each name. The bank accounts mostly joint. The retirement funds separate. He took notes as he went, occasionally letting out a low whistle when I told him more about the withdrawals, the trip to Cancun, the jewelry charge. "This is bad, Everett," he said, "but we've got a strong case. If she's hiding money, we'll find it, and you're entitled to half of everything." I knew that, but hearing it from Reggie made it feel real. I wasn't going to let Barbara walk away with everything, not after everything she had done. For the next 2 weeks, I kept up the act. I played the part of the injured husband, telling Barbara I was doing physical therapy twice a day and making progress. She called me exactly twice during that time, each call lasting less than a minute. Always too busy to talk, always rushing somewhere, but by then, I had enough of a head start. I'd found a new bank, set up my own account, and transferred my half of the savings, exactly half. No more, no less. I'd canceled our joint credit cards and gotten my own. I found an apartment, nothing fancy, but enough for me and Curtis, our dog, who I planned to get back. And then I learned Barbara was planning a girls' weekend in Nashville. Perfect timing. I hired a moving company, scheduled them for Saturday, and paid extra for packing services. I made a detailed inventory of everything that was mine before the marriage, what we bought together, and what was exclusively hers. Reggie helped me make sure everything stayed legal. The waiting was the hardest part. What if she came home early? What if Gage stayed behind? What if she canceled the trip? Friday morning, I was a bundle of nerves. But then Bernice drove past our house at 7 a.m., and Barbara's car was gone, replaced by an airport shuttle van with luggage being loaded in. It was time. Operation Empty House was officially underway. When Bernice picked me up at noon, I could feel the weight of everything shifting. We arrived just as the moving truck pulled up. The movers were efficient, getting straight to work. I had my keys, my list, and a fire in my gut. This was the moment. As I walked into my house, I couldn't help but feel a wave of disbelief. Everything looked the same, but somehow different. Like I was walking into a stranger's home, not the one I'd built over 8 years of marriage. The house was spotless, almost like Barbara had been keeping it immaculate for someone else. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in, then turned to the movers. Start with the big stuff. Leave Barbara's stuff for now. Curtis came bounding down the stairs when he heard my voice. His joy was pure, and for a second, I almost lost it. But I pushed the emotion down. This wasn't about sadness anymore. It was about survival. The movers worked fast, taking everything I was entitled to. I left Barbara's things behind: her vanity, her closet full of clothes, and her craft supplies. But Gage's room, that was different. I didn't have to take anything from there, but I did. I took the gaming setup I'd bought him last Christmas. I couldn't leave him with nothing. By 7 p.m., the truck was loaded. I did a final walkthrough of the house, making sure I hadn't missed anything. As I stood in our bedroom, staring at the wedding photo on the nightstand, I decided to leave it there. Let Barbara deal with that memory. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being invisible. I spent the first night in my new apartment, feeling strangely calm. The place was a mess, boxes everywhere. Furniture scattered wherever it fit, but it was mine. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for a phone call that would never come, or for some excuse about why Barbara couldn't be bothered to show up. I had my space, and I had my dog, Curtis. The two of us would figure this out. Bernice stayed late, helping me unpack the essentials. The place was small, but it would work. Curtis claimed the sunny spot by the sliding door, his tail wagging so hard I thought he might knock the blinds down. I'd never seen him so happy. Maybe he understood more than I gave him credit for. But even in the quiet of my new home, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. I'd spent 8 years building a life with Barbara, thinking we were in it together. And now I was watching everything I thought I knew fall apart. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for me. I was reclaiming my life, step by step, piece by piece. Barbara's texts started almost immediately. At first, it was just a few short messages, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. I didn't respond. I couldn't bring myself to. What was there to say? The real firestorm started a few days later. Bernice sent me a text at 6:47 p.m. that evening. "She's home," it read, waiting for the fallout. I knew what that meant. Barbara would walk in, act like nothing had happened, and then demand an explanation for everything. But I wasn't going to give her that. Not anymore. By the time the calls started flooding in, I had already made up my mind. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I had nothing left to say to her. The 6th call went straight to voicemail. I turned my phone off. Then came the texts. They kept pouring in, each one more frantic than the last. The messages from Barbara made my stomach twist, but I didn't react. "Where is all our stuff?" she demanded. "What did you do? Are you serious right now?" The tone in those messages, it was the same one she always used when she wanted to manipulate me. Like I was the one who had wronged her. I ignored it. She wasn't going to win. She didn't deserve an explanation. The real kicker came about an hour later, when my burner phone buzzed with a text from Bernice. "You need to see this," it read. She'd sent a clip from her doorbell camera. I opened it, and there, in all her glory, was Barbara standing on our front lawn, screaming at the house. Her hands were flailing, her face contorted in a way I hadn't seen in years. The audio was crystal clear. "He took everything, even the goddamn dog. Who does this?" And Curtis, poor thing, just sat there, chewing on his bone, completely unfazed. I almost laughed. It was like even he knew she wasn't worth the drama. That night, I turned my regular phone back on. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, 4 voicemails. I listened to one of them. Barbara's voice, shaking. "You can't just disappear with our stuff. This isn't legal. I'm calling the police." I forwarded the message to Reggie. He replied almost instantly. "Let her call the police," he said. "Everything you did was by the book." I almost smiled at that. It was the first time I felt like I had control. The next day, the divorce papers arrived. I didn't know what I expected, but seeing the official documents made everything real. I wasn't married anymore. That part of my life was over. But then came another text from Barbara. "We need to talk," she wrote. "I know you're upset, but this is extreme. Call me. We can work this out." There it was, the classic Barbara move. The same old attempt to manipulate, to get me to come crawling back. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I didn't call her. I didn't even respond. Instead, I had Reggie send her a formal letter outlining everything I had taken what was mine, what wasn't, and the divorce terms. The letter was clear, concise, and legal. No drama, no arguments. Just facts. A week passed, and Gage reached out. He asked if he could visit. At first, I hesitated. The kid had hurt me too. "We don't miss you." Those words had stung, and I couldn't just forget them. But then I thought about it. I had raised him for 8 years. I had been there for him. I couldn't just shut him out. So I told him to come by, but only after school, and only if he promised not to tell Barbara. Bernice didn't like it. She thought it was a trap, that Barbara might be using Gage to find out where I was living. But I had to know. I needed to see if there was any chance of salvaging things with him. When Gage showed up, he looked smaller, like he had shrunk in the few weeks since I'd seen him. He was wearing the hoodie I'd gotten him last Christmas, and he stood awkwardly in the doorway, unsure of what to do next. Curtis, of course, was all over him, tail wagging like mad. We sat down on the balcony, just the two of us. Gage stared at his shoes, avoiding my gaze. I didn't push him. I let him talk when he was ready. Finally, he looked up, and his voice cracked as he said, I heard them. Mom and Silvio. They were talking about you, about how convenient your accident was for them, how it gave them more time together. And the thing I said, we don't miss you? That wasn't even my idea. Mom told me to say it. She promised me a new gaming system if I said it convincingly enough. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My own stepson had been coached to hurt me, but it didn't surprise me. It only confirmed everything I had suspected. I wanted to tell you, Gage continued. When I came home and everything was gone, it made me see it. I saw who Mom really was. She wasn't looking for you. She was more worried about the furniture than about you. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I'm glad you told me, was all I could manage. After Gage left, I sat on my balcony for hours, trying to process everything. My mind kept racing, thinking back on all the signs I had missed over the years. The late nights at work, the weekends she spent with friends I didn't know, the slow growing distance. The next morning, I received a text from Barbara's new number. I know Gage visited you yesterday, it said. I saw his phone. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Reggie. He told me to keep everything through him from now on. Any more threats, any more harassment, it would all go through him. That's the procedure in a contentious divorce. 2 weeks after I moved into my new place, the doorbell camera caught Barbara sitting outside in her car. She was just sitting there, staring at my building for 3 hours. Bernice sent me the video, and it sent a spike of anxiety through me. I didn't want her near my space, my new, safe space. I didn't confront her. I didn't want her to see how much she still affected me. Instead, I kept moving forward. One day, a package arrived at my door. No shipping label, just my name written in Barbara's handwriting. Inside was Curtis's old dog bed, some photos of Gage and me fishing, and a letter. I didn't read the letter right away. I shoved it in a drawer and tried to forget it existed. That night, Barbara called again. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Her voice was different this time, subdued. She asked about Curtis, asked if I was healing okay. Then she fell silent. For a long time, I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke again, her voice low. "I'll tell you everything. No more lies. No more games. Just the truth." I listened for the next 2 hours as she laid it all out. She admitted to the affair with Silvio. It had started months before my accident. She had been planning to ask for a divorce, but when I got hurt, she saw a chance. If I died, she'd get the insurance money. If I lived, she'd have to split everything. That's why she never visited me. She'd been hoping I wouldn't make it. And when I survived, she started pulling money from our accounts, preparing for the inevitable separation. The Cancun tickets. The jewelry store charged for a gift to Silvio. Not to her, to him. When she finished, I had only one question. "Why tell me this now?" She laughed, but it was hollow. "Because Silvio dumped me," she said. "I guess he wasn't up for the drama. So now I'm alone, with a son who barely talks to me." I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of the manipulation. Tired of the games. "I'll have Reggie handle everything from here," I said, and hung up. A few weeks later, the final divorce hearing took place. It was brief, anticlimactic. The judge asked a few questions, then signed the papers. 8 years of marriage dissolved in less than 30 minutes. Barbara stopped me in the hallway afterward. She handed me a wedding photo, the one I had left behind. She said she thought I might want it someday, for memory's sake. I didn't take it. Instead, I thanked her politely and tucked it into my jacket pocket. When I got home that night, I threw it straight in the trash. Gage still visits on weekends. He's been staying with me a lot more lately. I think he's starting to realize what kind of person Barbara really is. I'm still healing physically, but I'm getting there. My leg still hurts, but it's nothing compared to the weight that's been lifted from my shoulders. And then there's Tessa. We've met up for coffee a few times now. Nothing serious, but it's nice to talk to someone who gets it. I never imagined it would end like this, but I'm not going back to that life. I've learned to put myself first. I don't need Barbara's approval. I'm going to be okay. For the first time in a long time, I'm finally at peace. Story 3. I still can't shake the feeling that I'm living in an alternate reality, one where my trust was shattered in the dead of night. It all started just a few nights ago. I woke up unexpectedly at 1:47 a.m., my body fully awake as though some internal alarm had gone off. The hum of my husband's phone buzzing on the nightstand broke the silence. Normally, he's a heavy sleeper. His phone could buzz, ring, or even scream, and he wouldn't stir. But this time, I was wide awake. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe a work notification or something harmless. But when I saw the light from the screen, I froze. It was my sister's name. At 2 a.m. Let me give you some context. My sister, Katie, and I have always had a strained relationship. We weren't exactly enemies, but we weren't best friends either. She's more of the outgoing, flirtatious type, while I tend to be quiet and reserved. Honestly, I never had any real reason to doubt her, but seeing her name pop up on my husband's phone at that hour made my stomach drop. I tried to ignore it, thinking there must be an explanation. Maybe she was drunk and texting everyone. Maybe she needed help with something. But then it buzzed again, and again. By the third message, my gut kicked in. I grabbed the phone, unlocking it without thinking. We knew each other's passcodes. What I saw next? I wanted to throw up right then and there. The messages weren't overtly sexual, but they were intimate, undeniably flirtatious. His text, "Can't stop thinking about last night." "Wish you were here right now." Her reply, "You're making me blush." "Stop it. Then I told you we shouldn't talk like this. But you're impossible." I nearly dropped the phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I scrolled up, heart sinking deeper with each line. There was so much more. Flirty emojis, inside jokes, references to times they'd been alone together. There was even a message from him saying, "You looked amazing last week. Wish I could have kissed you goodbye." I remembered that week. We'd had a family dinner. Katie had left early, and I hadn't thought twice about it. But now, the past few hours came crashing into sharp focus. The messages went back for weeks, and there it was, plain as day. My husband and my sister had been texting late at night, flirting, keeping it a secret. I could barely breathe. My chest tightened, my mind racing. Was I dreaming? How could this be real? I glanced over at my husband, still asleep next to me, snoring lightly as if nothing was wrong. I debated waking him up right then, confronting him. But I needed more than just this. I needed proof. So I took screenshots. I sent the messages to my phone, just in case he tried to deny it later. Then I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to think through the chaos in my head. Eventually, the night gave way to morning. I could barely wait. As soon as he woke up, I confronted him. I told him I'd seen the texts. I asked him, point blank, what was going on between him and Katie. His reaction? Not shock, not guilt, just anger. He grabbed his phone, pulled it away, and started accusing me of invading his privacy. He kept saying, "Why were you going through my phone? You're blowing this out of proportion." I was stunned. He wasn't apologizing, he was gaslighting me. I asked him if he thought it was appropriate to be texting my sister like that, and he doubled down, claiming they were just harmless messages. "You're being paranoid," he said. Harmless? Seriously? I wasn't stupid. I told him those messages were clearly flirtatious and inappropriate. That's when he hit me with it. "You're so insecure. This is why I can't talk to you about anything." He was flipping the script, turning it all around on me. Somehow, I was the one in the wrong, the one overreacting. I felt like I was losing my mind. I kept asking for a straight answer, but he just stonewalled me. He got angrier, stormed out of the room, saying he wasn't going to deal with my drama. But it didn't end there. Later that day, I got a text from Katie. It said, "You need to chill. You're overreacting and making this into something it's not." I tried calling her, but she wouldn't pick up. Instead, she sent a series of cold, dismissive messages, making me feel like I was the crazy one. I had no idea who to trust anymore. My husband was acting like I was the problem, and Katie was brushing me off like it was nothing. I replayed every conversation, every interaction between them in my head, trying to piece together if I had missed something, if I had misread the signs. How long had this been going on? Was it just texting, or was there more? I felt trapped, completely blindsided. I didn't even know who I could talk to about this. How do you even bring up something like this? "Hey, I think my husband and my sister might be having an affair." It sounded insane. It felt insane. I was living a nightmare, and I didn't know how to wake up. It's been a few days since I first confronted my husband about those texts, and I wish I could say things got better, but they didn't. In fact, they escalated in a way I couldn't have predicted. The worst part is how everything shifted to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong, the one overreacting. After our argument, my husband acted like nothing happened. He pretended like everything was fine, going about his day as if he hadn't just dismissed my feelings in the most hurtful way possible. He even had the nerve to tell me, "We're not talking about this anymore. You're being ridiculous. Ridiculous." That's what he called me. I couldn't believe it. A few days later, we had a family gathering at my mom's house. She was hosting a small dinner, and of course both my sister and my husband were going to be there. I didn't want to go. I wasn't ready to be in the same room with them, especially with everything that had happened. But I didn't want them to think I was hiding or avoiding the situation. So I put on a brave face and showed up. The moment I walked in, I noticed it right away. My husband and my sister were barely speaking to each other. Normally, they'd exchange some pleasantries, a joke or two, maybe even share a laugh. But now, there was an awkward silence between them, a tension that didn't make sense to me. It was like watching a scene unfold where no one wanted to acknowledge what had happened, and it left me feeling more uneasy than ever. I spent most of the evening trying to act normal, trying to mask the chaos swirling inside of me. But every glance they exchanged, every awkward moment when one of them left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling like I was watching a silent conversation, one that I wasn't privy to, and it killed me. Then came the moment that tipped me over the edge. I walked into the kitchen to grab something, and there they were. My husband and my sister standing way too close together, whispering. When they saw me, they immediately jumped apart like guilty teenagers caught in the act. My husband mumbled something about needing a drink, and Katie gave me this fake, innocent smile. My heart was pounding in my chest. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I pulled Katie aside into one of the bedrooms, wanting to confront her one-on-one, hoping maybe I could finally get some answers. At first, she acted like she had no idea what I was talking about. She tried to play it off as if everything was fine, but when I mentioned the texts again, her entire demeanor shifted. She rolled her eyes and said, "Are you still hung up on that? Seriously? It's not what you think," I asked her. "Then what exactly am I supposed to think about my husband texting you at 2 a.m., saying things that are clearly flirtatious?" And you know what she said? She laughed. "You're so insecure. It's honestly kind of sad," she replied, as if I was the problem here. I was stunned, completely speechless for a second. How could she say that to me? How could she turn it around like that? I told her this wasn't about insecurity. It was about respect, about boundaries. That's when she hit me with something that I didn't see coming. "If you're so concerned about him texting me, maybe you should ask him why he's been acting so distant with you lately. Ever think that maybe it's because of how you treat him?" My mind went blank. What was she talking about? I asked her what the hell she meant, and she just shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "Look, I'm not the problem here. Maybe if you actually paid attention to your marriage, you wouldn't be in this situation." My blood was boiling at this point. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't just deflecting. She was blaming me. She was somehow making this whole mess my fault. I was shaking, my emotions all over the place. I stormed out of the room, completely fed up, and went straight to my husband. I told him I had just spoken to Katie, and I demanded to know what was going on between them. And you know what he said? He didn't deny it. He sighed, like he was so over my drama, and said, "This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you. You always blow everything out of proportion." I couldn't believe it. I asked him if he was seriously having an affair with my sister, and he laughed. He actually laughed. "An affair? Are you serious? You're making something out of nothing. She's your sister, for God's sake." I reminded him of the texts. I asked him how he could justify them. His response? They were just jokes. "You're the one turning them into something they're not." I was losing my mind at this point. Every time I asked for a straight answer, he twisted things around. He kept saying things like, "This is why we can't have an honest conversation. You're too sensitive." He even started bringing up irrelevant things to distract me. "What about that time you went out with your friends and didn't text me back all night? You didn't see me freaking out. What did that even have to do with anything?" I couldn't argue with him anymore. It felt like we were speaking two different languages. He was gaslighting me, and I was spiraling. But things didn't end there. Later that evening, Katie texted me again. She told me, "You need to let this go. You're going to ruin your marriage over nothing." Nothing? That's what they both called it. Nothing. Meanwhile, my gut was screaming that there was so much more going on. The next day, I decided to do some digging. I went through our joint bank account and noticed a few transactions that didn't make sense. There were hotel charges, expensive dinners at places I'd never been to. My heart sank. I remembered a solo weekend trip my husband had taken a couple of months ago to clear his head. Suddenly, that trip didn't seem so innocent. The final straw came when my cousin, who had been at the family dinner, casually mentioned that my sister had stayed over at our house for a few days while I was out of town for work. I had no idea. No one had told me. When I asked my husband about it, he said, "Oh, it was no big deal. She just needed a place to crash." A place to crash? In our house? While I wasn't there? I was done. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Every time I tried to uncover the truth, they twisted it. Made me feel like I was the crazy one. I was being gaslit, isolated, and unsure of what was real. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I had to get to the bottom of this, even if it meant facing the truth I wasn't ready to hear. The whole situation had turned into a living nightmare, and the more I tried to confront it, the more I was gaslit and made to feel like I was the problem. But deep down, I knew what I saw, and I couldn't ignore it. The turning point came one night when I overheard my husband talking on the phone. He thought I was asleep, but I was wide awake, unable to shut my brain off. I could hear him pacing in the kitchen, his voice low but angry. At first, I couldn't make out the words, but then I heard it. He said her name, Katie. Then I heard him say, "You have to stop texting me. She's already suspicious enough as it is." My heart stopped. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone and quickly recorded a snippet of the conversation. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make everything clear. They were hiding something, and I wasn't imagining it. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let them twist this around any longer. The next morning, I invited Katie over, under the pretense of wanting to clear the air. My husband's reaction? He was visibly uncomfortable when I told him she was coming over, but I didn't care. I had to do this. I had to get the truth, even if it meant facing them both at once. When Katie showed up, I wasted no time. I sat them both down, my voice calm but firm. "I know something's been going on between you two," I said. "I've seen the texts, I've heard the phone calls, and I want the truth. Right now." At first, they both denied everything. Katie was the first to put on her usual smug act, dismissing everything with a casual, "You're being ridiculous." There's nothing to tell, but I could see the panic in her eyes. My husband looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He stammered, trying to explain it away, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I pulled out my phone and played the recording of his conversation. As soon as he heard his own voice, the color drained from his face. Katie froze, her smile faltering for the first time. It was like watching their whole facade crumble in real time. My husband broke first. He admitted they'd been texting, that it had been going on for months, but he swore up and down that it was just emotional and never physical. My sister chimed in, almost like she was trying to defend herself, saying, "See, I told you, it's not what you think." Like that made it okay. I was beyond furious. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked them if they really expected me to believe that nothing physical had happened, especially with everything else I had found. The hotel charges, the nights she'd stayed over when I was away for work. How could they possibly justify any of that? But they didn't have an answer. They just stood there, awkwardly shifting, trying to avoid eye contact. That's when Katie dropped the bombshell. "This wouldn't have happened if you weren't so cold and controlling all the time. Maybe if you actually paid attention to him, this wouldn't be happening." It felt like a slap across the face. Not only were they trying to justify their betrayal, but now they were blaming me for it. My own sister was making it sound like I was the cause of everything that had gone wrong. I was shaking. I could feel my blood boiling. I looked at them both, the two people I had trusted the most, and I snapped. "No," I said, my voice cold. "This is on you, not me. You have no right to blame me for your actions." I turned to my husband, my heart sinking. "You've made your choice. I don't know who you are anymore." I shook my head in disbelief. "You've both betrayed me in the worst possible way." Katie tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having it anymore. I cut her off. For the first time in weeks, I felt clarity. I stood up, walked straight to the door, and told her, "I don't want anything to do with you. I'm done." She didn't fight me on it. She just left, probably feeling like she'd somehow won, but I didn't care. As for my husband, he begged me to stay, pleaded with me to work things out. But I knew there was nothing left to fix. There was no coming back from this. I packed a bag, called a friend, and left that night. I didn't even look back. I spent the night at my friend's house, feeling like a weight had been lifted, but also like I just walked away from everything I thought I knew. The next day, my mom called. Apparently, Katie had gone crying to her. painting herself as the victim and saying I was overreacting. I told my mom everything: the texts, the phone calls, the gaslighting, the betrayal. To her credit, she was horrified. She promised to talk to Katie and said she would support whatever decision I made about my marriage. But I was done. I wasn't going to be manipulated or gaslit anymore. Then came the final blow. A mutual friend of ours reached out to me a few days later. She'd told me she had something important to share. My heart sank as she explained that my husband had been messaging her too. Inappropriate texts, flirtatious messages, all of it. She hadn't said anything because she didn't want to cause drama, but now that everything had blown up, she couldn't stay silent. It hit me all at once. It wasn't just about Katie. It wasn't just about this affair. It was about the fact that my husband had been doing this to so many people. He was a manipulator, a liar, and I had been blind to it for years. The whole thing clicked. The way he always downplayed my concerns. The way he made me feel like I wasn't enough. It wasn't just about one mistake, it was a pattern. I filed for divorce. I went no contact with Katie, at least for the foreseeable future. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her, or him for that matter. But right now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life. I'm learning to trust myself again, and that's where I'm putting all my energy. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's to trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let anyone, no matter how close they are, convince you that your feelings aren't valid. I spent too long doubting myself, and I'll never make that mistake again. I'm done being the one who doubts. From here on out, I'm the one who's in control.